Hi, my name is Ali Slides, and I'm going to be giving a presentation about eating disorders. So, brief definition of eating disorders. Eating disorders are a mental disorder that involves extreme disturbances in eating. This can involve overeating or undereating. And the causes, psychologists aren't really sure what causes it. It could be biological, psychological, or sociocultural, or even a combination of the three. There is a serious threat to health and personal well-being with eating disorders, which is why they are such a huge issue. And most individuals who do have an eating disorder should seek professional help in order to get treatment. So a little bit about the scope of the problem. About 30 million people in the United States suffer from eating disorders, and this statistic is from the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associative Disorders. And just a few other stats from the website. Every 62 minutes, at least one person dies from an eating disorder, which is alarming. And eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness. 13% over women over the age of 50 engage in eating disorder behaviors. And eating disorders affect all race and ethnic groups, and despite popular belief in the past, it also affects males almost equally as it affects females. And genetics, environmental factors, and personality traits all combine to create risk factors for eating disorders. The main type of eating disorder that comes to mind when people think of eating disorders is anorexia nervosa, and our course textbook defines anorexia nervosa as an eating disorder that involves the relentless pursuit of thinness through starvation. So what this means is it's characterized by extreme restriction of food, very low body weight, an intense fear of gaining weight, almost like a phobia that if that person eats too much and they gain weight, like it's just really scary, and then a distorted sense of body image. So if someone who is dealing with anorexia nervosa, they don't really see themselves as really thin. They just have this distorted sense that they are really obese, even though they could be under 100 pounds. And then anorexia nervosa, it increases the risk of osteoporosis later in life, which is the weakening of your bones, and then heart disease, since when you're anorexic, you're not only losing fat, but you're also losing muscle. And since your heart is a muscle, you're losing muscle mass in your heart. And then finally, complications with pregnancies, such as premature birth when having a child. Another major form of eating disorders is bulimia nervosa, and our course text defines this as episodes of binge eating and purging. So what that means is that person will eat a whole lot of food, and then they will want to get rid of that food by either self-inducing vomiting or taking laxatives. And most people with bulimia nervosa are very preoccupied with food. They want to eat food, a lot of food, but they don't want to gain weight. And they do have this strong fear of becoming overweight, just like people with anorexia nervosa have. And most people are depressed or anxious. And then because bulimia nervosa occurs within normal weight range, the disorder is often difficult to detect, and there is a stigma against it. People don't believe that, like, oh, if you're overweight, you can have an eating disorder, but many people who are bulimic are overweight or obese, and it's just a bad stereotype to simply single out people who are very underweight as having eating disorders when there's this large portion of the population that has eating disorders but is being looked over because they are overweight. So very near and dear to my heart is eating disorders in female athletes, and I found an interesting study from the National Eating Disorder Association. They reported that over 1/3 of female NCAA Division I athletes have reported attitudes and symptoms that align with anorexia nervosa. This is a huge population of young females that is very vulnerable to eating disorders, and it has a very high eating disorders have a very high prevalence in aesthetic and leanness dependent sports. This is sports such as cross country and gymnastics and figure skating, sports where it's highly stressed that you need to be thin to perform well in that sport. And then also, eating disorders are part of the female athlete triad. So the triad is made up of eating disorders, osteoporosis, and amenorrhea, which is loss of menstruation. So normally eating disorders, they will cause osteoporosis and amenorrhea in female athletes, and they all kind of influence each other, and it's just very prevalent in female athletes. So why this issue is so important to me and why I decided to do my research on this topic is that I am an NCAA Division I athlete. In both cross country and track and field, I just finished up my 4 years of eligibility, and I have seen eating disorders throughout my past 8 years of running, and my teammates, and just in my competitors, and it's a very troubling problem that I feel should not be this out of hand, especially in cross country. You don't need to be thin to excel in cross country, but it's kind of just this age-old tale that the thinner you are, the faster you'll get, and it's just simply not the case. And this is also really important to me because I do want to have a future career in coaching cross country and track, and this will be an issue I will likely be facing a lot of, especially when dealing with female athletes. And then finally, I just kind of want to touch on the misrepresentation of females in head coaching positions. I think I've done a lot of research about head male coaches and how this leads to greater incidence of eating disorders in female athletes, just because there is a gender disconnect, and especially in older male coaches, female athletes do not want to approach their coaches about these issues, and I really hope to change this in the future and to be kind of a pioneer in the field and help young athletes learn that they don't have to starve themselves in order to excel in this sport. And finally, I just wanted to touch on treatment options and recovery. Some of the more popular methods of recovery would be cognitive behavior theory. So that's actually working with a counselor in order to change perceptions of food and basically how they see food. And then also I read into psychotherapy and treatment centers. Treatment centers are very popular. Normally people will go there for the day and eat their meals there and be with other individuals who are struggling with eating disorders. And then psychotherapy involves, yet again, changing the actual behavior and getting to the root of why the eating disorder was caused and how they can change that behavior. And then finally, I also just wanted to touch on the importance of support from family and significant individuals. A lot of studies I looked at showed how important in the recovery process that that individual needs that support and needs to kind of reach out to other people and tell them about what they're going through, because a lot of people don't understand this, especially people who have not dealt with it firsthand. So to wrap things up, I talked about eating disorders and how they are a serious mental disorder that is often overlooked in society today and stigmatized, but should be taken into account more and treated more seriously. And I also touched on why this is so important to me, as I am looking in a future career in coaching and will be dealing with this a lot on a daily basis. And I also touched on recovery and treatment options and just future references for eating disorder help and recovery. Thank you.